Hello everyone! Welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2, Rinosuke's Resolve. This is V-Diffuser, and in our last episode, we started our second case. It appears that we are unable to practice law, and we are going over a case that appeared when we could, and someone knocked down a gate outside. Anywho, we also met our victim of the third case of the first game, who, as we recall, was not killed, just wounded. Anywho, this guy summoned us. It's time to see what's up. Naruhodo now. Well, if you're looking for Naruhodo the lawyer, that's me, but... Ah, Mr. Naruhodo, good. This is for you. It's a message from Mr. Saucy Nutmeg. Oh, God. Mr. Natsume sent a message to me? Well, why would a policeman be delivering a message from Mr. Natsume? Exactly. Did he get arrested again? What's a Scotland Yard constable doing playing delivery boy at this time in the morning? What are you waiting for? Let me see that. Oh. Well, this is most unexpected. Is something wrong, Mr. Sholmes? Is something wrong, Mr. Sholmes, he says. Have you not seen this note? No. How could I have? You yanked it from our hands. It would seem that London's criminals have no intention of letting the great detective rest. A new case calls. A case of murder, no less. We must depart at once. Murder? Redrum. Call a cab. Time is of the essence. But the trouble is, we've yet to read Mr. Natsume's note. I was thinking we ought to pay him a visit in his lodgings at once we did. That'll be entirely convenient. Convenient? What do you mean? It's all here in the note, my dear fellows. The murder we must investigate took place at Mr. Mustache's lodgings. Wait, what? I'll hail a fiacre at once. Wow, nothing boring happens to Soseki. It was only yesterday that Soseki was in court and we were dispelling doubts about his innocence. And now, the very next day, there's a murder at the man's own address. He may very well be the unluckiest man alive. Or so it seemed to us at the time, but we were soon to discover it was worse than we thought. Hey, it's that guy we barely saw at the last time we defended Soseki. This weirdo. What on earth? The gentleman's deceased without question. He's dead. Locum student, Mr. Naruhodo, Esquire. Mr. Natsume. Oh, why? Why is this happening? Why to me? I've only just got out of court yesterday. I was finally home after 2 days of misery. And then I wake up the next day of this. No early bird should catch a worm like this. Woeful worm without wiggle. I see you're in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Mustache. Ah! Not the horrible hairlock Sholmes. Shoo! Shove off! Shove yourself the door! I never invited you! Mr. Sholmes came here with us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume. I'm entirely at your disposal, Mr. Mustache. What can I do for you? Here they are already. The busybodies. Ah, Inspector Gregson, what a pleasant surprise. Pleasant, is it? Gives me heartburn every time I see your face at a crime scene, Sholmes. Ha! I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is a result of your excessive consumption of fried food. That would do it. Good morning, Inspector. Hey there, crime scene. Don't you go touching anything. Or good morning to you, too, sunshine. Alrighty. What a terrible thing to have happened. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested for the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. Endless existence of excruciating experiences. So the victim lived here on the ground floor and your room is just 1 story up, is it? Is that a typo? Yes, that's right. In a way, we were neighbors, I suppose. Did you know the victim? Were you friends? You're not saying anything. What's the matter with Soseki-san now? It was an innocent enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken by it? Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But did he ever invite me to his room? Never! On my honor, I swear it! What an extreme reaction. You're probably wishing you'd never asked now, aren't you? When we found him here, I felt wretched. Which is why I sent word asking you to come. Clear that inspector over there. Okay. Here's Gregson. So, Inspector, what was the victim's name? Who was he? Mr. William Shamspeare. He was a lodger here. Shamspeare? Oh, I know just the voice to give him. As you can probably tell, he was an actor. Bit of a dead loss as it happens. Not just dead. That was horrible. It was the landlord, Mr. Garadib, and the other lodger, Mr. Natsume, who found him. The fella didn't rise at his usual hour, so Garadib got worried and kicked the door down. That's impressive considering Garadib has a bad leg. Oh yeah, you're right there. He was that jittery Japanese hunchback over there who actually did the kicking. Really? Soseki-san? The victim was pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside for petty crimes. He had no money, no place to go, and no friends. His only acquaintances were the people in his house. Miserable life, and a miserable end to it. So what exactly is Mr. Natsume still doing here? He's not involved in the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away from the crime scene? Well, I'm not saying it's because the fellow looks odd or anything, or that he acts suspicious. But I thought it would be prudent to take a statement from the cohabitor. You nearly said culprit there, didn't you? Oh dear. Mr. Natsume appears to be under suspicion. Again. It certainly seems that way. He does just come across as such an odd fellow, doesn't he? Poor man. How unfortunate. Anyway, can't say much until the coroner gets here. But I think the fella's been a goner that long. Body's still warm. Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to touch a dead body. Alrighty. There you are. What are you doing? Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Ha! You need only to observe to know it, my dear fellow. Investigating, naturally. What you are is striking a JoJo pose. There is nothing natural about that pose. And yes, I did actually start watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure over the break a lot, over Christmas break. Mr. Sholmes, have you made up some miraculous discovery? Patience, my dear madam. Patience! We've not been here in this room 5 minutes. So far, all I've managed to deduce is what actually happened. Right, it's one of these. Isn't that everything we need to know, Mr. Sholmes? Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see that way. At the present time, I have managed to draw two incontrovertible conclusions. The first, that there was a physical struggle here last night in which the victim fought for his life. Ah! Ah! Mr. Natsume, what's wrong? Something what Mr. Sholmes said significant somehow? No! Don't mind me! Forget I was here! You have a right to have that twitchy eye. Considering your entire life in this game is a giant train wreck. And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air just last night that passed the victim's lips. Nonsense! Alright, Mr. Natsume, why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? No, please! Pretend I'm not here! Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant. Impossible to ignore. You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail, and you're likely still going to be wrong. But of course, let the theatrical tragedy be before us be unraveled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure in 2 acts. We've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. That is one way of calling them, that's for sure. No doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our eyes this time? So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Herlock Sholmes, logic and reasoning spectacular. Act 1. The game is afoot. Pip pip cheerio. Cause of death. It's seafoam green? Ugh. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in the disconsolate room last night. Eesh. From at the mouth of the deceased indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate which contains, you will observe, 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap. Meaningful? Indubitably. Why is the soap set so purposefully upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course! The fork reveals the answer. You don't eat soap. It appears that the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in a deadly battle for his life. And yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end, he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. But London's foul soap is preferred to life. What even is this? Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. The soap and the lather about the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of foul soap. London's greatest detective, this one. Though personally, I have greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax, of course. Soap's not poison. The cause of death is identified. We proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? A single teacup suggests the answer. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. I am Soseki right now. What the fuck is going on? The careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover the tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. Though forced open now, at the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior soap from whence wafted an inferior scent. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. We can take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on its way to the hereafter. You're still dead wrong. This concludes the final act of Herlock Sholm's great deduction, and you are still incredibly dead wrong. That's all we can really do about that right now. There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed to identifying just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Harder? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he was, you really think the man would have eaten soap? It's quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. It is a curious thing, but to one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. What world are you living in? How extraordinary. In truth, I have fried a little soap myself in the past. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. And did it? As I wreathed in agony on the floor and spilt the contents of my stomach, yes, I believe it did. The experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. It has an unpleasant taste and it leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. There's something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh, what's that? It's Mr. Natsume. Hey! I couldn't help noticing him shuddering and quivering out of the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Sholmes' deductions touched a nerve somehow. Never! Nonsense! Well, that clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective's deductions may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. You say gentle. Yeah, Mr. Sholmes' observation and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it in at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Right then, let's see what we can do. We must pick out the keywords in Mr. Sholmes' quite brilliant deductions, and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we can do that, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Sholmes meant to say in the first place. In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise for Herlock Sholmes, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. Alrighty. Careful of blah 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 blah. No, it's not that. No. I am Mr. Natsume right now. He's looking at us going, what the hell? That's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, I should prefer to use a fork to attempt it with chopsticks. And of course, only half the bar of soap is left on the plate. Might there be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap. Alrighty. Hello there.
Take that!
There. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course. The other piece of soap reveals the answer. It being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really, for no depths of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, took only a single bite. But that begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruhodo, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. But London's fouls, blah 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 blah. The victim's life was claimed by poison and... No, it's not the soap. He's still pushing the soap argument, then. Excuse me. Well, unless he's deciding that he suddenly decided to go into Fight Club instead. If soap in London's that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. There are no signs of any food in this room at all. Food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? Alright, we got it to present to Tika. There. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been the vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. And it would appear that this victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in the room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the ingestion of poison contained in this teacup. There, that's better. Poison in the teacup. That makes more sense. Cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall blah 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 blah. Did the man dine and die alone? No. The Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily on our deductions so far. And we can imagine that shortly before his death, Mr. Shamspeare was having a drink of tea. There'd be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is that Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholm suggest it. There's more to this than it seems. Yeah, there's gotta be another cup, because there's an indent right there. There we go. There we go.
Take that!
Did the man dine and die alone? The other teacup suggests the answer. Yes, there are 2 teacups in the room all along. Ah! In other words, this is a strong indication at the victim's Last Supper, there was a guest present. At the very least, we can say now with certainty that somebody else was here at this room last night taking tea with the victim. What are you talking about? Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly unreasonable! To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more can we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. You mean to say you know who exactly was in this room at the time of the victim's death? Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. No, I don't think so. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the halcyon days of eating too much soap. But the identity of the guest who was there last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Time to look around again. Alright, what have we got here? At first glance, it seems that the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costumes. I'll overlook these 3 books initially. I wonder what they are. Let's see. The titles read, The Picture of Monsieur Lecoq, Canterbury Yearnings, and A Meal for Gabario. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. It could just be an incredible coincidence, but they're the exact same 3 books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. Oh boy, Soseki, what'd you do this time? Ever been here before? What does this mean, do you think? I really don't know what to make of it. Familiar pile of books.
Take that!
Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the pile of familiar books. Quite so, it's no mere coincidence 3 titles are in this room. It's the link to the truth. Hey! Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at a second-hand bookstore. Just coincidence! In that case, you will be able to bring the same 3 titles from your own room, will you not? At this very moment! No! Never! Non-negotiable! If you can't bring your own copies here, it proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. Should you conceivably have brought books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could only have brought these 3 books here to the victim's room. JoJo Pose Extravaganza! Last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there's only one possible conclusion. The victim died here in his room last night as a result of poisoning. And that same night, the victim had a visitor. And that visitor was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Thus concludes the final act of Herlock Sholm's great deduction. Really, Soseki? Really? Elementary. Nothing's ever elementary with you, Soseki. Not again! Not again! Not again! Not again! Well then, Mr. Natsume. It appears you're gonna have to accompany me down to the yard. Again. But wait! Hold your horses! Yes? Door! Key locked! Entry, exit entirely impossible! He's so flustered he's being even stranger than normal. Well, you think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy. What? You live in the same building after all. You'd have plenty of opportunity, I'm sure. Misery me! Sorry, sir. You'll get your chance to give your side of the story later. The facts speak for themselves, Mr. Mustache. Ah, you horrible Hairlock Shawls! He really has found himself an arch-rival now, hasn't he? Come on now, no dilly-dallying. I saw it, there's a carriage waiting. Welcome, student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in this position again, but... You have to help me, please, please. I'm innocent. Alright, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh yeah? My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. And so, his evil curse still apparently unbroken, Soseki-san found himself once again prime suspect in a case of murder, and we found ourselves having to go into the next episode. So I will see you guys next time.